It can happen to somebody else.
Well, you check and then, that's the thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen,
never a
here we
dull
go.
moment.
Welcome. Okay, I'll tell you where we are. Pull ourselves in. We're Yud Chetem Beis. 2, 4, 6. I'm counting from the bottom. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 lines to the bottom. And it should be Beis Shammai Omrim Ein Mochrim.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So, what are we up to? Right. Beis Shammai Ein Mochrim. So, there's a number of items which had to begin before Shabbos, according to Beis Shammai, and had to be going. And Beis Hillel says, as long as you start them right on before Shabbos, you don't have to make sure that nothing is completed and processed and so forth. So we had the idea of soaking things for the dye to be accepted, for putting the flax into the oven to get whitened, and other things that putting out traps to catch animals before, whether they need enough time to catch them or not. And then the next in the list here is Beis Shammai says, Ein mochim lanachri, okay, that you can't sell to a non-Jew. V'ein tani mimon, you can't load him up as donkey. V'ein magbim alav, and you can't actually put the pack on his shoulders. Ela kadesh yagil l'makam karov, unless there's enough time that he can come to a place that's close. In other words, he'll be out of your house and to
his destination.
To his destination while it's still day. And Beis Hillel says, no, you can, as long as he gets you out of your house, it's fine. Now, what's the real concern there? So the concern is that it would look like there's a machlokas in the Rishonim what the real concern is. One concern is it might look like you're hiring the guy on Shabbos. One concern might be that there's a rule that will
to do something for you.
Something to do for you, exactly, to do for you on Shabbos. It looks like you're paying him, so to speak, to work for you on Shabbos. Another thing that was of concern is that it looks like your utensils. Now, as if the guy is working for you, people may not know, is it your utensils, your kalim, his kalim, and they may think that your possessions are actually involved in work on Shabbos itself. So that's really what the Mishnah is, and it's really in line with this concern. It's a little different than the other ones, which seem to say malacha had to be done. The malacha here is more carrying and going from rishus to rishus, and rishus yachid to rishus rabim, and vice versa. So that's the introduction. That's what the Mishnah says, and the Gemara now expands a little bit upon it. And there's a number of cases that can become related to this about involving and what you can do with a guy and what you have to be concerned that people may misinterpret what's going on. So this is what I say, 12 lines to the bottom, or 13 lines, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, or 10 or something. Tan Rabbanan. Beis Shammai omrim ein mochrim. Tan Rabbanan. Beis Shammai omrim lo yimkor adam chefzel l'nachri. Person, this doesn't mean you can't sell to a nachri. You can't sell to a nachri until the following time. V'lo yashilenu, you can't lend to a nachri. V'lo yalvenu, and you can't, yashilenu means to, you let him use something. Yalvenu means lend the money. V'lo yitain lo matana, you can't even give him a gift, right? It's a one-way transaction. El kadesh yagil lebeito, unless he has enough time that he will be able to get to his house. Now, it's really not, and therefore people will recognize it's not about you, it's really about him. Uveis Hillel omrim kadesh yagil lebeit hasamach l'choma. No, that he has to get to the house that's closest to the city wall. Now, what does that mean? Okay. In other words, let's do one more sheet, and then you'll see how the three come together. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Kadesh mi Pesach Beito. Rabbi Kiva says it's enough he gets outside the door of your house. So we understand the first approach means he's got to get to his own house. That's Beis Shammai. Right, we understand Rabbi Kiva means he's got to get, as long as he's off your property, you don't have to worry about it. What does Beis Hillel really say? So before we give you the answer, let's look at the next two lines of the Gemara because we'll see how it develops. I'm Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda. Hein divrei Rabbi Kiva, hein divrei Beis Shammai. Rabbi Kiva and Beis Hillel. Rabbi Kiva and Beis Hillel are saying the same thing. Lo ba Rabbi Kiva el lefarish divrei Beis Hillel. Rabbi Kiva is really only saying and explaining what Beis Hillel is. In other words, the case of Rabbi Kiva and the case of Rabbi Beis Hillel is the same thing. The only difference is, in one case you're inside the wall, In the other case, you're actually out in who knows where, in the middle of, and outside the city. So where you're inside the city, what does Rabbi Kiva say? How far do the guy have to go? Off your property, right? When you're in nowhere, so the Beis Hillel says you have to get at least close enough to the city that is near the wall itself of the city. In other words, you can't say he's leaving your possession. You don't have a possession.
You're out in the country.
Right, so in other words, the first place where this would come up to be a situation of carrying would be he's going from outside into inside or reaching a place. So therefore, Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel and Rabbi Kiva are really saying the same thing, that except one is talking about in the city, one is talking about outside the city.
Get off your property.
Right, correct. And once again, it's a little different than the previous cases we had in past weeks, because it's really about looking what looks to be inappropriate. In other words, it looks like the guy may be working for you. Maybe people think the guy isn't employed by you. The guy is your shaliach. He's actually carrying it for you. It's like a marasayan kind of thing, more importantly, right? Or the extension would be that once again, I said this before, your possessions, right? You don't, not just you have to rest, but your possessions have to rest. Okay, now.
If you hold by,
they
both.
If it's your possessions,
But Kalim? No, sorry, you know the word I'm looking for.
Well, we have things running on autopilot, but in other words, okay? You're Kalim.
Right.
Okay, next piece. This is once again an extension of this, only we're now going to apply it not to Shabbos, but to Pesach, right? Tana Rabbanan. Now, once again, we follow Beis Hillel, correct? And it's a good thing we follow Beis Hillel, because I suspect most of you, if not all of you, give your chametz to the rabbi. Not you give your chametz. Ask the rabbi to sell your chametz. You don't give the chametz to the rabbi. And when does the rabbi sell the chametz? Allah, before the time is up to get rid of the chametz.
Right.
So there's no expectation the guy is actually going to consume any of this chametz before Pesach.
Sorry, he sells it. When does he sell it?
Not before.
He sells it about an hour.
Oh, an hour before Pesach.
The time between the time that you can't eat it and the time that you have to have it burnt.
Right.
So that's when they sell it. If you're still eating the
Yeah, but
chametz,
the guy can come during Pesach and take it.
that's correct.
But he's
So
saying,
what-
but before.
But in other words, but people are not going to. People will not be confused, or maybe they will be confused. They come to your house, and they see there's a closet that's locked up. They may think it's yours. It's really not yours. It belongs to the guy.
Okay.
Right? It's pretty confusing, actually. It's a pretty big harama,
Okay.
right? So Beishat Tan Rabbanas, but the same concept of how careful we have to be in terms of dealing with a guy. Beishamay Omrim, Lo Yimkor Adam Chetzel L'Nachri, Elam Ken Yodeh Bo Sheichala Kodem Pesach. So Beishamay says you can't sell the chametz to a guy unless you know that the chametz is going to be used up before Pesach. There's enough time that the guy can actually consume this chametz. That's very radical for us to even hear. Correct?
Well, I mean, even in those days, if
Right.
maybe you had enough chametz, the guy couldn't eat
Well,
it
the
all.
truth was, in those days, there was not that much chametz. First of all, they did not sell chametz back in those days. The only case we have is where they're on a ship. There's one case in the Gemara where they're on a ship.
So what did they do with it?
They got rid of chametz. Most, if you think about it, dry grain was not chametz. Dry flour that was just stone ground, that did not come into contact with water, was not chametz. What else was it? They didn't have macaroni. They didn't have macaroni. They didn't have,
So you're saying it's not chametz?
there was no chametz. There was no preservatives. There was no refrigeration.
Modern flour, I know they soak.
So
before
modern
they grind
flour the grain is washed as part of the milling process.
Yeah.
Correct. That's correct. They didn't do it in those days. That doesn't mean to say that you could use it for matzah. Maybe it did come into contact with it, but you didn't have to be concerned. Right? The seeds, in fact, the seeds were kept dry. Everything was kept dry as much as possible. You harvested and you used it. Right? So there was really very little storage. So what could be chametz? Whiskey, they hadn't invented whiskey. Whiskey is still being done in Scotland.
1600s or something.
Well, but not in
No.
the days of Chazal, right? They have fermentation of. Now you do have beer,
For sure.
right? You have beer or whatever kind of you could process with that or some similar thing. Just wasn't. The idea of selling chametz only becomes really in the Middle Ages when the Jews end up having the concession on liquors and other things, and then of course gets into the modern era where we have preservatives and so
Beit
forth.
Shammai is talking, here we are talking about selling chametz to goyim, even way back then.
But
right?
they
Just saying
saw.
there wasn't much to sell.
No, it didn't mean to sell to buy back. It meant to sell. In other words, sell like I go and
Yeah.
trade every
I
day.
understand.
In other words, that if you were sobies, you couldn't sell to a guy who's going to walk out the door with it, because the concern was he may still have your chametz on Pesach, and it could be marasayin. Now, once again, remember, we don't have packaged foods. So it's not like you buy a box of cookies, and if it's a box of cookies, it looks like all the other cookies. Your chametz, right? Your grain probably was very unique. So your bread was unique. So consequently, if you were a baker and you sold it to a guy on Erev Pesach, people may say, "Oh, this is Moshe's bread."
So what?
So it's marasayin. So it's marasayin.
He's not. The guy is eating your chametz. So what?
So it may look that's right. It may look like the guy is eating my chametz, but it still belongs to me. People won't know that he actually.
Why would you think that?
Because people think a lot of things. Because people are very concerned about Pesach.
No,
The same way with Shabbos.
They know that you're not allowed to have chametz on Pesach.
So
Why would someone think that too?
So you and I are in line with Beis Hillel, right? Who doesn't feel that's a problem. I don't feel it's a problem. You don't feel it's a problem. Beis Hillel didn't feel it's a problem, and nobody feels a problem today. So we're in good company. But Beis Shammai seems to take a minimalistic approach, or maybe a maximalistic approach, in terms of the amount of time that you sell it. That would have to be. Now, there is at least one object we're going to see in one half line that actually could be stored for a long period of time. So that would actually be extended over the time. So once again, Beis Shammai says you have to know, and how are you going to know? It means it has to have a period of time that you can expect the guy to finish it up. If he buys a loaf, so it's going to finish it in a day or two, right, or a day.
Yeah.
If he buys out, multiple loaves, it may be more extended. If he buys out grain, maybe the grain, it would take him, I don't know, a week, a month to finish up.
Yeah, but the fact that you're selling, the rabbi is selling to this guy, everybody's chametz, so he's not going to finish it off if he wants to. He can't finish it off.
Who, the guy?
Yeah,
Why not?
because you're selling a whole community worth.
No. In the days of the Gemara, the community did not sell. No.
Today, yeah.
No, this is talking about trading. This is talking about merchandising. This is talking about I can't sell. In other words, this is talking about bartering. I can't sell a guy chametz unless I can't. No, it's like, how can I describe it? In the same way that I can't sell to a guy on Erev Shabbos, right before Shabbos, even though it's now the guy's, he's going to walk out with it, because people may think that he's working for me, or he has my stuff is working. He's my shaliach. So therefore, Beis Shammai says you have to make an extension and make sure that there's enough time for him to get to his own house, or to get whatever it is. And Beis Hillel says no, as long as it's off my property, out of sight, out of mind. So Beis Shammai says the same thing, not about selling it to buy it back. See, we're so accustomed to this idea of selling chametz in Erev Pesach, that who would sell chametz in Erev Pesach unless you plan to buy it back? This is a society that there was no selling of Erev Pesach chametz to buy it back. Anyone who sold chametz in Erev Pesach sold it for good. Anyone who didn't sell the chametz for merchandise, burnt it, got rid of it. That's what beer chametz was. They didn't keep that much around. Right? And as I said, dry grain was probably, in all likelihood, going to be not chametz, as long as you kept the grain dry. Right. So remember, the grain is grain. When it rains on the grain and the grain is growing, it doesn't become chametz. It only is going to become chametz when you harvest it and you leave it outside. Don't leave it outside. Right? You have a dry season, a rainy season there as well. So at any rate, Beis Shammai takes this approach, which for us is very strange, that you got to make sure there's enough time for the guy to finish it up. Beis Hillel omrim kol zman shemutar la'achlo, mutar la'machro. As long as you can eat it, you can sell it. Right? It's mutar to eat it, mutar ba'no. What do I care what the guy's going to do with it? Rabbi Yehuda is going to follow Beit Hillel, only is going to make not an exception, but give you a very specific example of probably the one item that remained for a long period of time. Kuta chabavli. Kuta chabavli was some kind of like yogurt, cottage cheese that was made with some kind of moldy kind of bread that created its fermenting fungal agent that enabled this thing to develop. I don't know what it tasted like. It sounds like it must have been terribly, but it was like some kind of yogurt, some kind of dip, and as a result, because it was a dip and because it was fermented and because it kept fermenting, you didn't have to use it right away. I mean, milk had a short life. You wanted milk, you milked the cow, right? You milked the goat. But this was something that could stay. So as a result, because of that, it could stay for a month. Okay, it's hard to imagine. How can you imagine keeping yogurt out for a month? What it would taste like, right? Whatever. probably would be healthy. It may not taste great, but it's probably the yogurts, the active cultures are having a good time. So kutach habavli v'komine kutach. So this is called kutach habavli, and I guess other forms of kutach were these dips that were made of some kind of fermented milk together with some kind of microbial agent that was made from fermenting kinds of grains and bread. Asur limkor lamajo l'shloshim yom kodem Pesach. That was prohibited for 30 days before Pesach. It's no different than the rest of Beis Hillel, except they were concerned, except that this is a different kind of situation because it looks like you probably could keep it for a long period of time. Now, maybe you could keep actually kutach for a longer period than 30 days? Right? So what Rashi says, the reason for 30 days is because before 30 days, you don't have to worry about Pesach. Shloshim yom sholim v'doshim Pesach. So consequently, even if this kutach stayed for 6 months or a year, well, I guess maybe not a year, 6 months, you could still only have to worry about it for 30 days before. Once again, so this is the same kind of thing. Next, Tana Rabbanan. Now from guy, we're going to go to a dog. And please don't say there's a racist comment here. Okay. In fact, the idea of putting out for a dog is actually of greater concern, perhaps.
Today it's still a concern, right?
It is a concern today, correct?
People have dogs.
No, there's nothing wrong with feeding it, but the dog may come to take it and take it off, take it away, right? Okay. So, but you are responsible, and that's what Moshe was trying to say. Moshe was trying to say that you're responsible to feed a dog, but you're also responsible to make sure that your animals don't work on Shabbos. Correct? Right? It says, I think we pointed this out, the Aseret Table says, right? L'man yanuach shocha v'chamorecha, that your donkey and your ox will rest. So if you don't work, you rest, your donkey rests. That's not, by the way, related to a non-Jew. You rest, and the non-Jew does what he wants to do. Right? He can't work. May not question whether he can work for you, right? But he surely can work for himself. Okay. Tan Rabbanan, nos nimizonos lifnei hakelev b'chatzer. You can put out food for the dog that you're responsible to feed. Netalo v'yotzo ein nizkakim lo. So that you can, if the dog takes it and goes out, I don't have to worry about it, right? So in other words, this is not about not feeding the dog. Sure, you feed the dog, but this was an open yard, or a yard that had exits and entrances. If the dog runs outside and is carrying outside, I don't have to stop him. Kiyotzebo, similar kind of thing in this. I told you where the dog and the non-Jew will come together in the same brisa. You can put out food for the non-Jew in the chatzer. Now the question is, why am I responsible to feed the non-Jew? Is this because of the gashel? Yeah, there's nothing wrong with feeding it. He might be starving. That's right. There's nothing wrong with doing it. Correct. It's a very nice thing. But once again, the tolov yatzo ein nizkakim lo. So if the guy takes it and goes out, right, this is not giving it him to take like in the previous case where I'm giving him something or I'm lending him something or giving him a gift. I put it out for him to eat. Right. He picks it up, he's eating it, and he walks out. I don't say, hey, stop, you're going outside the Eruv. No. So that's fine. So I don't have to worry about it. Ein nizkakim lo. So once again, the Gemara says, hasu lamali. Okay, so why do I need two cases? One about the nachri and one about the dog, right? It's a similar kind of concept. I'm not working. I'm not causing them to work. I'm not even giving it to them. So, so the Gemara says, "Hainu hach." It's the same thing. The same. Rami alei, v'halo rami alei. So one is I'm responsible for the animal to make sure the animal doesn't work. The guy, I'm not responsible. So you might have thought maybe it only should apply with a nachri. Maybe it wouldn't apply with a dog. I would have to stop. So Kamashlan comes to tell me it's no difference between the two. Okay. Tosfos, by the way, says the reason that we feed, that we are responsible. We have a human rights responsibility to the world. We can't discriminate between Jews and non-Jews. So Tosfos used the term Darkei Shalom. It says, you have to take care of, you have to set up a social net responsibility for non-Jews the same way as Jews. And therefore, because of that, I am responsible to look after the Nachri. Like I want to be very careful, not like I have to look after the dog, but there's a certain social responsibility that I have in terms of making sure that even if I'm specifically preparing for him, right, there's an idea of not doing extra work on Shabbos. It's not work like malacha, but maybe I shouldn't do work. For example, I don't prepare for after Shabbos. It's rabbinically, it's a rabbinic prohibition. So, so this is, I surely can't be doing Isser malacha. right? There's there's a Tosis in small parentheses that quotes from Noah's Zarua about some case where a Nachri became very sick on Shabbos, and he required the Jew to send him wine, or some kind of wine, or some kind of grape liquor or something like that. So, and if he didn't send it, right, he said, "I'm going to kill you." And apparently, this was a guy who could keep up to his threat. So they asked the Shaila, "What should they do?" Right?
What's the show?
Well, because is he going to? It doesn't mean. So let me rephrase. It didn't say I'm going to kill you. He was a person muchzak bo'ir. He was a person of political strength in the city. So the concern was what he might do. Right? What would be the implications? So they said, yes, of course you can send it to him, and you send it him with a guide to take it, and he shouldn't carry it, and so forth. But there was once again the idea was because of Darkei Shalom. Obviously, there's a very radical case of Darkei Shalom because if they didn't do it, it would be the exact opposite of Darkei Shalom. Okay. So, so these things actually did come up in one form or another sometimes in the Middle Ages. So once again, all of these are the extensions. This is the extensions to all the cases we have about how much do you have to do it before or not. Okay. Another example here. Tan Rabbanan. Next case. Where are we? About the 6th, 7th line. Tan Rabbanan. Lo yaskir adam kelav l'nachri b'erev Shabbos. You can't rent out your utensils. Might be utensils, might be clothing. Okay, let's say I've got I have a hoe, I have a shovel, right, which I can't use on Shabbos. I can't lend it out, or I can't rent it out to a Nachri on Erev Shabbos. By the way, so there's a lot of discussion in the Achron, and what about building? If someone is building for me a house, right? Do they work on Shabbos? Don't they work on Shabbos? Right. In this case, though, it might be not a contractor. Contractors may be different than this guy who's simply using a utensil and working in a different way.
What's interesting is if you're in the business, let's say of renting out tools, a Jewish guy.
Correct.
And the Gentiles want to work on you. They're not working for you, right?
Right.
They want
Correct.
To work on
Correct.
Any day.
Right.
Well, it sounds like you can't rent it to them.
The tools.
Yeah, which
Did
is.
you rent it on Friday maybe or something? You rented a day
Well,
early.
no. Well, all these are just before Shabbos. That's
Yeah.
That's
Right.
First Shabbos
what
probably
the
not.
subject is, right? Just before Shabbos. I guess, right?
Yeah.
I
Right.
think they come to you 2 hours before Shabbos and say, I want, like you're in the business, I want to rent your tools.
Yeah. So lo yaskir adam kelav l'nachri b'erev Shabbos. However, b'Revi'i v'Chamishi mutar. However, on Thursday and Wednesday, Wednesday and Thursday, it's permissible to do so. Okay, and I guess the concern is that it looks like you're renting this to the Nachri to do work for you on Shabbos. That would be the concern. So if I do it on Wednesday and Thursday, that's further removed away from Shabbos. I'm just renting. Once again, if I rent it to Nachri, he does what he wants to do. It's not really a halachic problem.
Yeah, I'm going to say.
These are not prohibitions min haTorah. They simply look like to be gedarim, additional things, fences to make sure people didn't get confused. Okay. Kayotze bo, similar kind of thing. In Meshalchim Igros Biyad Nachri B'erev Shabbos, you can't send letters. Now, once again, letters were a lot more complicated in those days than they are today. Probably even less of a problem today in Canada where there's no Saturday delivery. Okay, even less of a problem when no one is using a mail anymore. Okay, but you couldn't send letters using a delivery service by a Nachri on Erev Shabbos. B'Revi'i v'Chamishi mutar, but on Wednesday and Thursday it's permissible to do so. What's the concern? What's the concern about sending on Friday? There's no real mail service as it is. This was one-on-one. You contracted or you had someone delivered for you. What would be the problem?
You only get to do it on Shabbos.
He's going to do it on Shabbos. He's going to do it on Shabbos, right? Actually, maybe we'll do it on Friday.
Depends how close you are.
Depends how close he is.
Here you get sorting. You could put it in Friday afternoon, say 4 o'clock pickup in the winter.
But no one's going to see it. Correct. Of course, they're sorting over the weekend.
Yeah.
Sorting
So actually, you can see sort.
I don't know if they're sorting, but let's say they're
Let's assume they do sort. Okay, let's assume they do sort, or they drop it off. And as Archie pointed out, Erev Shabbos is early. Right?
5 o'clock pickup.
Oh, yeah. 4 o'clock, whatever, yeah.
So the answer is, but it's really not going to affect you. They don't have to sort it on Friday. Like they could sort it on Sunday. They're sorting on
right.
Correct. They're sorting it on Friday really because they want to sort on Friday. That's their union hours.
Okay.
Maybe they're
Right.
picking it up in Shabbos.
But the other part is you don't know when they're sorting it, and no one sees it when they're sorting it, right?
But if you're saying if they deliver it on Shabbos, then you'd have a problem.
Right.
Because
Correct.
if it's sorted on Friday, deliver on Shabbos.
Right. So the problem here is that
Could have a problem.
because there is no real service standard, standard of service. So you don't know when this guy is going to deliver it. It may take him longer. For all you know, this guy's going to be walking around a whole day Shabbos looking to find the right recipient, the right receiver. And even if you send it on Friday and you hope it was going to be delivered on Friday, maybe it will be delivered on Shabbos. Right, by the way, the problem that I'll stop just in the middle for a second. This becomes an issue, of course, in the United States, where there is Saturday delivery. Right? So what do they do? And the answer is, first of all, mail is so slow, it's probably not a problem. But seriously, it's really wrong to ask for expedited Saturday delivery. Okay? Unless
express mail.
Right, unless maybe you sent it before. If you send it early in the week where they can still deliver it by Friday, you probably could do that. But
I'm sure they used to be delivered on Saturday.
Yeah.
Twice maybe even.
Right.
Even to the British mail used to do
Right.
Even to a goy.
Even to a guy, because in other words, you're asking the guy to work for you on Shabbos.
Right, you're asking to do something for you.
Right. If you are asking for the Saturday delivery, you're really asking this guy to work for you. He's working for you. He's not working for Uncle Sam. He's working for you because you've asked him to do it. If you tell him to deliver it on just regular first class post, and they do Saturday delivery, you didn't ask them to deliver on Saturday. Correct. So the answer is, that's why I said would be expedited Saturday delivery would be a problem, right?
Okay, I'm just thinking if you order something from Amazon.
Although how they
Friday-
delivered, when they delivered, it's their
You order
problem.
on Friday mornings.
Oh.
It's 24 hours or something Thursday night. I don't know.
Especially when they're moving faster now, yeah.
No, we get 24-hour delivery or something.
Yeah.
Correct, but even if it's 24-hour delivery, I guess it depends when the 24 hours will be up on Shabbos. But you could deliver it before Friday. I don't know.
Yeah.
You're right, I don't know. I do remember, by the way, in the States, it was sometimes a problem where they would ask for a signature, right? Delivery with a signature. What do you do? Right? Hopefully, you knew the postman. He wouldn't mind signing it for you, but otherwise, it was a big mess because you have to get it redelivered and go back to the post office, everything else.
I tried to order from Amazon in the States, so it doesn't. Try not to get it delivered on Shabbos.
Yeah.
Because it's issues. I try to order like Monday or something.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, or Friday, so it could take 3-day
That's why
delivery.
it says, do it on Wednesday or Thursday.
Well, whatever I'm saying, but the issue really is, especially where you remember this, and this is further complicated by the fact that there is no postal service,
No, of course.
right? So there's no Canada Post, there's no U.S. Postal
They're really
Service, so they're
yeah,
really
in a way.
working for you.
Yeah, he's really
It's like hiring a delivery service to deliver for you, right? Think of it that way, and you're requesting it's going to be next day delivery or that day delivery. That's what sending was all about. So the assumption was, if you sent it on Friday, you could even get it delivered on Friday, but if the guy got verblunged and he couldn't find you, there are no addresses, right? They come to the town. Where's Moshe? Well, which Moshe? Moshe the writer, the red Moshe, okay? All the accolades that they gave to people, this is how people were known. So there were no streets. So so whatever it is. Now, obviously, the assumption is you would never ask a Jew to do this. It's the only problem with Nachri. So it looks like the problem is, once again, it may even be a problem of only Draban. It looks like he's actually working for you. So once again, B'dalad B'hei Mutar, even though if he may deliver on Shabbos, right, Dalad and Hey is so far away that it was not going to be a Gezerah. Now, look at the next line. Amro Lava Rav Yossi HaKohen, V'amrileh Rav Yossi HaChasid. It's either Rav Yossi HaKohen, Rav Yossi HaChasid, not a Chasid, but it means it's Tzaddik. Shel Nimtza Ksav Yodo B'yad Nachri Me'olam. He never sent a letter, right, with a guy. Now, it doesn't really mean that. So Rashi says it means they never found a letter of his with a guy on Shabbos. That's really what it means. It doesn't mean that he never sent. It reads like this guy only hired Jews. Right? He only hired Jews to deliver. He didn't trust the Goyim. The Goyim were going to take apart his packages, sabotage him, fill him with anthrax or something. Right? No, it means, Rashi says it means Shabbos. Or it might have been he never, actually, I think, I'll correct myself. It may have been that he never gave it to a guy, but the concern was, he was concerned that the guy would actually deliver it on Shabbos, even if he never mailed it on Monday. So I'm going to retract what I said before. It's not because he didn't trust Goyim. The concern was, in other words, normally we're only concerned on Friday mailing, Friday sending it out. But Rav Yossi HaKohen, Rav Yossi HaChasid, was concerned even if he mailed it Sunday, that it may end up being delivered on Shabbos. And people would say, look, this is Rav Yossi, he is sending the guy on Shabbos.
Sent it yesterday.
Yeah, probably sent it yesterday, and he asked the guy to deliver it today. All right. Now we have a brisa that kind of expands on this a little more. Okay, and you'll see that some of the differences, the nuances of difference. And this is why it really becomes modern post is a little different. Ein Meshalchim, just pay attention to the words because the Gemara is going to go back and forth on this. Tan Rabban. Ein Meshalchin, Igeris Biad Nachri Erev Shabbos. You cannot. Ein is low. You may not send a letter with a Nachri on Erev Shabbos. Elam Kain Kotzes Lo Damim. Unless you actually set the actual fee, and at that point you give it to the guy. It's like paying up front, like you do with postage. Right. So therefore, the concept is that if you pay them up front, then it's like he's on his own.
Contractor. He's a delivery service.
Right. You've kind of cut your responsibility. You've severed responsibility. That's what it looks like at this point. Beis Shammai omrim kadei sheyagia lebeiso. Ubeis Hillel omrim kadei sheyagia lebeis hasamach lachoma. The next line seems to be very strange because the first line looks like it says if you set it and paid him and finalized it, and he wasn't going to see you again, then it's okay. And then Beis Shammai says no, you've got to give him enough time to get to his own house. And Beis Hillel says not the delivery house, this house of.
His own house, right?
I'm sorry, the house of the recipient. The house of the recipient, not his own house. The house of the recipient. The Beis Hillel says, no, you've only got to get up to the near enough to the city that is being sent to. Once again, Beis Hillel is less of a time period than Beis Shammai. But the point of it being, it looks like if you set it up and you pay them in katzatz, it's okay. And then Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel says you still got to leave a certain amount of time. Get it to make the delivery time. There's not enough time to deliver to the house. Beis Hillel says enough time to get to the city. So the Gemara says valo katzatz. You already said that once you set it, once you determine the price and you paid it, you're out. He can do whatever he wants. So Amrav Sheishes hachikama. You have to read it like this. V'im lo katzatz. Okay, so the Gemara says, here's what it means. Now, if you set the price and you pay the guy and he's on his own, you don't care. You give it to him, it's clearly he's the delivery man. If you didn't set the price, he's your shaliach, and he's going to have to come back to you and tell you how much it is, and he's really working for you, and you pay him later, he's still working for you. So then you have to give him enough time, either according to Beis Hillel, to get to the recipient's house, or Beis Hillel says until the house that's closest to the wall, the city wall. Okay. Now, the Gemara says, 1 second. How could you give an answer like this? Says the Gemara. Right? It says via Amret Reisha, the beginning of the Brisa said, Ein Meshalchin, right? Ein Meshalchin, you can't send it unless you katzat. So if it said Ein Meshalchin, this one Rashi says it means the beginning of the Brisa. There's in the Bach on the side, there's a little note says that other Rishonim say it's referring to a different Brisa that says that's not this Brisa. It says you can't send it at all with a guy in those houses. So how could Beis Hillel and Beis Shammai say you have enough time to reach and not enough time to reach it? So the Gemara gives however we understand the question, the Gemara's final answer is Lokasha hadekfi beidar b'masa v'had lo kvi beidar b'masa. So the Gemara's answer is it depends if the doar was actually, Rashi says shilton ha'ir, he was like the mayor or the regional commissioner, so to speak. If the regional commissioner was living in that city, then you could, as long as you gave it to the guy on Erev Shabbos, it was fine, because he knew, everybody knew where this guy was. If you were not sending it to the regional commissioner or the mayor, then you had to have other times that were built into it because you didn't know if the guy would get lost. So it depends on what the chances were that this mail would be delivered in an expedited fashion.
Doar is the big
So Rashi says the dar is the big shot. And the reason is because the big shot received almost of the mail, 90% of the mail. Other Rishonim say it's similar but not the same thing. It does mean that the big shot received all the mail, but where the big shot lived, there was the main post office. They knew how to route things around. Okay? No, as opposed to if you sent it to some little dorf, some little four corners, and they had to find a farmer who lived in Yehupitzville back, the 2 cornfields over, 1 wheat field over, and in the onion patch, right? They could get lost. But if you were sending it to the place where the main postal office was, then you knew they would know where to find it. It means it was a more inhabited kind of area. Chances are, whatever primitive postal services they had or delivery services were centered in the larger areas. So, in other words, if this is how it comes out in the end. So, if you're sending it to this major person, then you can send it to him if you paid it up in advance. You can even give it to him right before Shabbos. If it was in a different place that was not where this guy was, then you have to follow the other cases where you need to give approximately enough time that it would be to be delivered itself. Okay.
This is how you spell doar, though, in the modern...
Yes, it is. Correct.
Right?
Right.
So, this is doar, right?
So there are some, yes, this is true. But the question is what our modern word of doar, where does it come from? It comes from here. You're doing it backwards.
Yeah, no,
Right.
when I saw it here, I said,
Right.
took it from here, maybe...
Right. So,
The mail.
mail's
I know,
doar.
but it's from here, you think?
I don't know.
I think so.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
I'm always shocked in modern Hebrew
Yeah.
when I read a midrash or something and I say, those are the exact words that they use, right?
Right.
Like pargiyot. In Israel, it's like the main thing on, let's say on Independence Day, they cook pargiyot, a little chicken thing.
Right.
There's a whole midrash from Rabbi Yossi. I mean, it's like amazing, really.
Right.
The Hebrew from way back when found its way into...
Okay. Now we come to a thing that's a little more problematic, okay? Tan Rabbanan. It's problematic in modern usage. Tan Rabbanan, next case. Ein mafligim b'sfina pachos migimel yomim kodem l'Shabbos. Okay, this is about going by boat, okay? The question is, what would be wrong by going, what could be a problem going by boat on Shabbos?
Might stop, you have to get off. Get on.
Okay, so don't get off.
Changes your shoes.
So it changes rishus. So one thing might be that you'd be going, either changing rishus, or more importantly, you're going outside Tchum Shabbos. Okay? Now, the truth is, you may remember that rishuyos are like only 10 amos high.
Right.
Remember we
right.
talked about this?
Yeah.
So really on the high seas, there is no rishus.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, it's rishusless.
Right.
However, if you are leaving from the port, right, and let's say until it becomes, the most immediate place is going to be maybe going outside the Tchum. It could possibly be depending on where the port is situated, where the city ends, and so forth. So that becomes an issue of once you reach the port, you're actually you're entering into a Tchum. By the way, if just as an aside, if you are on a boat or a cruise ship and you dock on Shabbos, right, that's where your actually Tchum now begins. So actually, I think you can only go 2,000 amos from that point. From the ship, okay? So those people don't sometimes know that. It's very complicated actually going on cruises. But anyway, so the first thing is it may be... For many reasons, not all of which is Shabbos, have to do with food and other things as well.
Can you go from both?
So if you're coming from outside, I think you can come out, get off the boat. But if you came before Shabbos, I think you can. Okay.
You have to get off the boat too in modern times.
There are stops along the way.
Oh, stops.
Okay.
Stops, yeah.
Ports of call, right? So one issue about traveling on a boat that we're concerned about here, and this the boat is going to leave or travel, maybe the issue of going chutz l'tchum. Okay. Second issue that they're concerned about, the Rishonim say, is that there's a gzeira not to swim. Right. One of the things we don't do on Shabbos. You might have to dry yourself, but the same way that we don't climb trees on Shabbos because you might break a branch. You don't ride a horse because you might break a branch to use as some kind of whip or whatever. You don't swim as well for a number of reasons, midrabanan. So therefore, whatever the gzera was for swimming, even if you're on the boat, you're not swimming. You hope you're not swimming, but it still may be included. That's the second concern that they have. The third
if you had to swim, it'd probably be
correct. The third concern is these are probably all alternatives, A or B or C or D. The third possibility may be that you might be, and this might be a real concern, you might be called on to help the sailors, right, as they struggle under some unfavorable conditions. And that may be malacha, that may be at the very least ma'aseh chol, right, the uvda the chol, non-Shabbos activity.
So that could happen for me 4 days before also.
That's true, correct, that's correct. But it means if you're leaving right before Shabbos, means that you actually are not really concerned about Shabbos. People have to travel. You know, we are very fortunate, we fly. Once upon a time, the only way to go places was by boat, right?
So 10 days to Europe.
Correct. People probably can remember stories. If you didn't go, your parents went, or whatever it was. People came to this country, this continent, by boat. That was the only way to go, right? So if you're going right on Erev Shabbos, means you might be concerned about those things might happen. Shuyot, we talked about going from Rosh Hashanah. One is helping them. One other one that comes up is, and this is a very interesting one, it's called Oneg Shabbos. What is Oneg Shabbos? If you get seasick, right? You get seasick, you're actually going to have a very bad Shabbos. Okay, now, so what would be good about leaving not on Friday, leaving a couple days before? You get used to it. I'm not really quite sure if that's true. Okay, I don't know. People have to speak with people who get seasick and what that really means. But if after 3 days it says Hurgalu B'Davar V'Shuvein Bitul Oneg, maybe that would actually make the most sense of why the difference between Wednesday and between Friday. By the way, it doesn't say here. You'll see in a moment. It doesn't say Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It says 3 days before, right? So actually, the Rishonim point out that this doesn't mean Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. 3 days before is Wednesday you can leave, because Thursday, Friday, Shabbos.
Right.
Okay, a little trick there of how to count. Okay, so Tan Rabbana Ema Fliegen B'Sfina Pachos Migam Yomim Kodem LaShabbos. So these were, by the way, and they traveled. People traveled by boat. Okay, maybe not as frequently then as they did today, but as they did in the 20th century. But they did. B'Med Dvar Mamurim. When should you not leave on Erev Shabbos, or right before Shabbos, when it is Lidvar Rishus, something that you don't have to go. Aval Lidvar Mitzvah, Shaper Dami. But if you have to go for a mitzvah, obviously you can leave right on top of Shabbos. Now, Dvar Mitzvah doesn't mean Pikuach Nefesh necessarily. Right? Dvar Mitzvah means that you're going for a positive purpose. Maybe you're traveling for a Pidyon Ben, maybe you're traveling for a bris, right? People, there were islands around, there was Cyprus people went to, and there was Greece that they went to. So these things could happen, could be done in a few days' journey, maybe not a day, but whatever it was. So, for example, we know many times Chazal went to Rome. Rabbis went to Rome to argue on behalf of the Jewish people. Now you can say that's Pikuach Nefesh. Sometimes it was Pikuach Nefesh. Sometimes it was about ensuring that they maintained the presence. Right. So that's called Dvar Mitzvah. And at any rate, and you set with the sailors. And by the way, the assumptions, of course, the sailors are non-Jews, right? You set with the sailors that they should not work on Shabbos. V'eino shovet, and if they don't stop, that's just the way it is. Like, you just keep going. In other words, you say, I'm buying a ticket on this boat on the condition that that you won't sail on Shabbos. But if the guy does sail, it says, right. This, by the way, this comes up in a lot of ways, not just on boats. This comes up, for example, caravans. Right, people joined caravans to travel long distances. They were, let's say, whatever they were, Bedouins or merchants or camel drivers. They just kept going. If you didn't stay on Shabbos, yeah. So you know, if you didn't go with them, it was like you were not safer. You were over. Right. It was in the middle of nowhere. Okay. So the same similar kind of thing comes up, I think, by the way. So who says it's Divrei Rebbe? So this is what Rebbe says that you have to do in terms of a boat. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Omer Ein Otzarach. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says you don't have to set up this kind of rule that I'm going and you're going to wait and you're not going to wait and so forth and so on. So this is about going on to a ship that's going to leave it. And the word maflikin, by the way, is a very unusual word. Rashi's not quite sure where it comes from. They find some kind of Greek word. Where's our Greek? I'm sorry, some kind of French word. Jonathan. Pilgus. Such a word?
That's Old French.
Old French? I know, I asked him Old French. For ocean?
The ocean is ocean in English.
It's aqua.
In English, ocean is a French word.
Okay.
Yiddish.
Okay, so Rashi says that mafliin comes from the word pilgus, which is the deep ocean. Filgus or pilgus? I don't know. Okay. So at any rate, this is an extension of the extensions, right? What's the concern here? The concern here looks like you are really not concerned about Shabbos, and you're trying to hire people to break Shabbos. The answer is you're not hiring people to break Shabbos. You're stuck on the boat, right? You don't like any time you got on a boat. You're a passive passenger here. But if you leave on Erev Shabbos, it looks like you're hiring people to make the trip specifically on Shabbos and for all the gzeros. It looks like it's swimming. It looks like you might have to do Ma'aseh Chol. It looks like you might be going outside Tchum intentionally to break Shabbos and hiring these people to do so. Okay, and then the final piece is Umitzur Litzidon. Okay.
That's a short distance.
It's a very short trip. Tzur is Tyre. Sidon is Sidon, right? It's along the coast. It's along the coast, right? Whatever it was, I'm not sure the topography and the geography, they would travel on the ocean, on the sea. Afilu Erev Shabbos mutar. They can travel even Erev Shabbos because it's a short trip. It's less than a day's journey, and not just that, but Rashi says apparently that this in Sidon Friday was the market day. So this was, in other words, if Rashi is correct in what he's suggesting, this is actually a frequent traveler, right? A frequent flyer kind of trip that people would do. It's like the shuttle service, the Montreal-Toronto shuttle, okay? Boston, New York shuttles and so forth. So this was fairly common, and people would do it. Now, I guess I don't know if they could get back, but they could get at least one way to the place that they had to be. Even though you say, well, who knows what will happen? You hit a storm. Those things can happen too,
Yeah, but
right?
very short. They probably just were just right on the coast, They didn't
Right,
walk
correct.
far,
Okay. Look, I mean, there's all kinds of questions today. What happens? You try to leave for Erev Shabbos, and things don't go the way you want them to go. It's a very complicated kind of thing.
The other reality was that, especially if you're talking about Sur, that roads were dangerous in those days, very dangerous.
Well, pirates.
There weren't any roads.
There were pirates just off the coast, like a couple hundred yards. I'm not talking about the high seas here.
So, you mean just go? Oh, yeah.
I'm saying these are like those short. When you go on the road, people can kill you. They would hold you up.
So you
pirates mean robbers.
Even if they wouldn't make
Yeah,
it
on
back,
the road,
they'd still be
on the
okay,
sea.
right?
That's what I'm saying. They would just go
wouldn't make it back on time.
Right.
I mean, from Tour
Let's say the
to.
weather was bad
that
that day.
Coast Guard up.
So yeah, we can't get off in the middle of the ocean.
Correct.
Correct. But once again, they're not doing any malacha.
I think of pirate
Right.
ships.
I mean, the question always came up about people. Who said it before? The ship docks. You don't get off on Shabbos. You don't have to. You don't get off on Shabbos. There are stories that happen. Same thing. What happens? What happens, by the way, if your plane lands and Shabbos has come in?
Yeah.
It's very complicated. What do you do? So
They're going to throw you off.
they'll throw you off.
Plane.
So you get off the plane, but you get into the airport. You may be stuck in the airport for Shabbos, right? Unless you still have time to get home or something. Walk home, send your baggage with a taxi, right? But it's unless you're like a rinky-dink airport that closes down. I don't know if Pearson doesn't really close down, but they stop flying from 2 to 6. But you can stay there. People sleep overnight. I'm sure they get stuck between flights. So I'm not quite sure that you could actually, if it was after dark, after Tzeis Kochav. And by the way, you can surely have a goy. You can surely travel. A goy can take you on Ben Hashmashos,
Oh, sure.
right? Well, it's probably about 40 minutes after, let's say until Tzeis Kochavim. But after that, it would be hard to say the guy would have to take you unless you felt you wouldn't be safe staying where you are. Okay, let's say, I don't know, you have to figure out what it was.
I thought it starts at sundown. Why would he?
Because you can have a guy, the idea of shvus, the idea of rabbinic prohibitions and extensions does not happen till after Ben Hashmashos. So in other words, I can't ask a guy to put on lights, or let's give another example. I can't ask a guy to cook for me, but I could ask a guy to cook for me on Ben Hashmashos. So
I have that leeway of.
Right, the Ben Hashmashos, let's say, it's 40 minutes is right, but 40 minutes from what? 40 minutes from Lichbenchen, or 40 minutes from sunset? But definitely not 40 minutes from sunset, maybe more like 20 minutes after sunset, or 30 minutes after sunset, right? Lichbenchen, what?
18 minutes. 18 minutes.
It's probably, right, well, Lichbenchen is 18 minutes, 20 minutes before sunset,
about an
right?
hour later.
So how much is it between sunset and between actual getting dark? Now up here,
Winter, it's half an hour.
It's probably, I said, about a half hour. It's probably about a half hour, correct? Right. Right. Now, if you had a Tesla, right, Tesla or I don't know what a Volt, right? That might be a better solution because surely an internal combustion engine is really probably eish min Torah, right? Whereas an electric motor is probably only eish midrabanan. So maybe if a guy is only doing a drabanan to transport you, I don't want to say you should guy be driving your Tesla on Shabbos, but I'm saying, but if you wanted to kind of look at how to minimize it, there's a reason to get a Tesla just for that, okay? I'm sorry? Are lights H like incandescent lights? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but not LED. But not
LEDs are probably not okay. I mean it's really complicated. So I'm like, don't try this at home. But I'm saying, but in terms of you think about what the internal combustion engine is, it really is it's a fire. Except it's every fire every
It's a spark.
More of an explosion than a...
So the question is a spark, right? Is a spark really Aish?
Exactly.
Is a spark by itself Aish?
gasoline is.
Right. So one of the issues about electricity, and let's leave incandescent lights aside for a moment. But electricity is really when you flip the switch, you're causing a spark, and the spark is that moment. Now I'm not sure if really sparks still when we have now electronic switches, becomes very very complicated. I think.
The voltage is too low to spark it.
But whatever it is, it works in a different kind of mechanism. So,
once you got a coil, you'll get a spark made up.
like a motor.
I mean, you can
Is the motor-
1.5 volt battery with a coil.
Right.
But a spark, what makes a spark?
But a spark is not Aish. So I'm saying a spark is a derivative of Aish because Aish is about a fire. It's not about a single spark.
Yeah, no, but
It doesn't really continue.
No, but the spark from a spark plug had nothing to do with, it's like just an electrical.
Correct. The spark actually causes the explosion. And the explosion is the oxygen and the gasoline is combustion.
sure.
Combustion is a fire. Okay.
That spark plug's like 50,000 volts or something.
However
Not
many,
12 volts, it's higher voltage.
but whatever.
It's higher voltage.
I think 20 or
I think
50
breakdown potential is 10,000 volts.
Something that's quite high.
Okay, we're getting into too much for you guys, the engineers. We're out of our league. I don't know. Okay. But I bet it's higher, even higher for a diesel motor.
Right.
Because diesel don't have oxygen.
No, diesel doesn't
have spark plugs.
Sure, but it's so high that it doesn't use oxygen, right?
No, diesel doesn't have spark plugs.
Doesn't have
The
spark.
compression, it takes,
Okay.
compresses it so much that it's
Doesn't have spark.
spontaneous combustion. Because it compresses it so much, 20.
Okay, but whatever it is, as you're causing something to cause the compression,
It's
which
fire,
will cause
it's fire, it's
correct.
fire.
Okay. At any rate, this is really in terms of the idea of traveling and the extension about the concerns we have for trying to do things to try to be respectful for what Shabbos is. Okay, how much time do we have? We have about 5 minutes? 7 minutes? So, you know what, we'll do 3 lines, and I want to just take a moment, I want to show you, I talked about Rav Moshe Feinstein's tshuva about Shabbos clocks.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so maybe we'll do that now. Okay, maybe we'll just stop here. Okay, so I have a Hebrew version and an English version. So I'll do the English version with you. Those want the Hebrew version, you can maybe spend some time with it. This actually,
How do you get an English version?
they're from different places. They're not the same. They're summaries of it.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
if you-
they're-
the Hebrew actually. Just give me one copy. Okay. I'll wait for. I'll only need one copy, not to. Okay.
I didn't see it back there.
All right. So this really is stuff. This goes back, and I wanted to do it last time we met. I think I wanted to do it whatever it was, and this like weeks and weeks and weeks ago, right? And then we missed a whole bunch of weeks. This is the bottom where it says 2 halacha using a Shabbos clock.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the original tshuva that Rav Moshe wrote many years ago about using timers and Shabbos clocks. It almost becomes anticlimactic because the whole world runs on timers now, right?
Absolutely.
The problems we face when we make Shabbos clocks, of course, looks like so, I don't know, back in the day. Okay, so, it's really based upon, the tshuva is actually based upon the concept that we learned a number of weeks ago about opening up a channel that would water the garden automatically.
Right,
So
right,
you're
right.
doing something in Erev Shabbos that's going to really work itself on Shabbos itself, okay? So the Gemara cites a brayso that says one is permitted to open a sluice gate or the channel before Shabbos to allow water to flow into his garden or field on Shabbos. Similarly, midoraisa, one is permitted to put wheat into a water mill before Shabbos, have the mill grind the wheat on Shabbos. The Rabbanan prohibited letting the mill operate on Shabbos because it makes an excessive noise. You remember that, okay? So this is Gemara have an implication with regard to saying a timer or Shabbos clock prior to Shabbos in order to cause malacha to be formed on Shabbos. Okay, so this is really, just to be very clear here, this is not about necessarily the Shabbos clock for lights. It's about Shabbos clock for other things. Let me think if you wanted to think of an example. Shabbos clock on a chulin pot. Shabbos.
What's the difference from lights and other lights?
You'll see in a moment, okay? So Rav Moshe Feinstein, Igros Moshe Or Chaim Chelik Daled, rules that one may not set a timer for Shabbos in order to cause malacha to be performed on Shabbos. The key of the Gemara was setting a process. Right. This is having a timer that's you're setting the clock to do the stuff before. He writes, although the Gemara permits certain actions to be done prior to Shabbos, when the results of these actions will occur on Shabbos, that allowance applies only when the process of malacha began prior to Shabbos. In the case of Shabbos clocks, however, the malacha begins on Shabbos. So if let's say I had something set up like a hot plate, there's a good example. You have a hot plate and you have the clock set on Erev Shabbos for the hot plate to go on, let's say 10 o'clock Shabbos morning. Right? So the heating element is going to heat the food or anything else. For example, it's probably very common you all have some kind of setback thermostats. That's a good example, right, on your heating system. You're going to say your heating system may be more complicated because if you don't have heat, you'll get ill. Okay, that may be the reason for heat altogether. But you could probably think of a lot of things that are set up on timers that are run by timers. Especially today, everything runs on a timer. So Rav Moshe writes two reasons why the use of a Shabbos clock should be prohibited. First, the halacha says, the halacha prohibits one from telling a nachri to perform a malacha from on Shabbos. Right? Everything we did today was about telling a nachri before Shabbos. Right? This all extensions of because you can't tell a nachri on Shabbos. Just as one man can't tell a nachri to perform malacha from Shabbos, one can't tell a program a mechanical device to perform malacha for him on Shabbos. Now, by the way, you could argue on that. Right, a guy is a person. He's working for you. It's a machine. It has whatever. Well, you could say Rav Moshe Feinstein felt there was no difference. Okay, other posts can feel there is. So at any rate, the analogy is to having the guy not work for you on Shabbos. You can't have this clock work for you on Shabbos. Okay, second of all, Rashi explains that one may not have his millstone operate on Shabbos because noise that it makes is a disgrace on Shabbos. It's called zilusa the Shabbos. That's the Hebrew word, zilusa. Zilusa is a disgrace. And if people were to have their mills running on Shabbos, they would be transgressing the mitzvah of kavod Shabbos, honoring the Shabbos. Similarly, and this you really can argue on, setting a Shabbos clock to do malach on Shabbos is a disgrace to Shabbos and a violation of the mitzvah of kavod Shabbos. Now you could argue, depending on what it's doing, it could actually be a greater kavod of Shabbos. Right? You have hot food. Right, it's not a disgrace, but I guess in a world when this tshuva was written, where this was really the new technology was timers. I don't know if you remember the old timers. I remember timers. They were like a box. They were humongous, right? I remember my parents got one as with kids. This was like, changed the whole world. This is the time when Rabbi Moshe Yeres wrote the tshuva. So therefore, he gives two reasons. You see, you can't have a nachri do work. You can't tell nachri do work on Shabbos. You can't have a program to work on Shabbos. And second, it's going to be zilus of the Shabbos by changing what was normally done or not done. Nevertheless, Rav Moshe does permit the use of a Shabbos timer for setting lights to go on and off. Now that's the part of the tshuva most people don't know. People think he said everything is asur. He didn't. He always said that you could use it for lights, and that's why lights became where timers actually became first accepted in halacha. Why? Even though he prefers to disallow the use of a Shabbos timer altogether, he permits using it for lights, because it was the accepted common practice in Europe to have a nachri extinguish and rekindle lights in the home of Jews at given hours. Right? We do not have to be more stringent with regard to a Shabbos timer. By the way, the fact that Goyim used to put lights on and off, the Shabbos Goy, right? The only thing that they allowed them to do. Now, why was that different?
Coals to heat up the oven.
So and coals, the coals were not to heat up the coals were to heat up the room. If they didn't have coals to heat up the room, they'd get sick. So that was because of choli. But why'd have to put the lights on and off?
I don't know why.
So the logic really was that the lights that were added only made additional illumination. In other words, if you didn't have lights, Friday night you had the lights were still burning.
Okay, right.
Shabbos morning you came to the shul, there was light from the windows.
Right.
So the guy came in, put the lights on. He wasn't really doing a malacha for you only. He was simply adding to what was already there. He didn't make the impossible become possible. He simply added additional illumination. Wait, let me finish. The Shabbos afternoon, you had mincha, you still had light. Right? Maariv was already, Shabbos was over. Right? You didn't say Avdol yet, but Shabbos is the time for Shabbos. So it's not a problem. The guy's not working for you on Shabbos. So the real one of the heterim about why goyim were allowed to put lights on, right? The way they lit the candles or lit the whatever the flames were, the gas lights, was because it really wasn't doing a malacha. It wasn't really like cooking, where you made uncooked become cooked, which you can't do, right? Or doing some kind of work which is a prohibited activity. It was simply making it additional. Goyim did not put on the lights Friday night. The lights that were lit burned out. Right? The only time they called the guy was the next day, where there was some illumination. Now, maybe the illumination was not good.
I mean, if they're candles, the burnt out candles.
Right. They came in the shul in the morning to light the chandeliers. They came in the houses maybe to light candles. You could see. It wasn't really that light. Right? You've all been in situations.
Yeah, no.
You don't like it. I mean, I understand, but
No, it was very dark.
But our problem is our houses today, or our shuls today, are built not to make use of natural illumination. Right? If you think about the Beis Medrash here, if there's a blackout, you'd see nothing. There's no lights in the Beis Medrash here. Upstairs in the main shul, there are stained glass windows. It doesn't really take advantage of natural light. But if you want to take advantage of a natural light in a real environmentally conscious society, right, then the light would simply make it additional. Some of you may have actually, you come in your house and you forget to change the system on the Shabbos clock when before the clock is changed to after the clock is changed. You get up early on Shabbos, maybe there's no light on. But if the sun has come up, maybe you can see a little bit. That's less important whether they paid him or not paid him, but that's the only thing they let him do. But anyway, Rav Moshe says he doesn't argue that here. He simply says, seeing they always had going put on lights, having a machine put on lights is no different. We're not going to make it worse. Now, that's Rav Moshe's opinion, therefore. So he's really arguing about other kinds of malachas, not really about lighting lights for illumination. That he never said you can't use a timer for. Others, authorities, differ with Rav Moshe's Feinstein's ruling. The Chazon Ish permits setting a Shabbos timer to cause malach to be performed by Shabbos, and this is the halacha recorded in Shmer Shabbos Gilchas. By the way, the Chazon Ish was asked, the case that the Chazon Ish paskin about was about using a milking machine on Shabbos. That was so others point out that this was really something about Sarba L'chaim. So the Chazon Ish may not have meant every other case, but many people felt the Chazon Ish said once you can use it, you can use it. But that was specifically the shaila that he was asked for. Right? It was very practical questions, which, by the way, they couldn't use. I don't think they could use the milk, or at least the milk had to be seen. By the way, the difference, by the way, between Cholav Yisrael and between the regular Tnuva, I understand, is Tnuva will use the milk that's milked on Shabbos. Right, the special Mahadrin level milk doesn't use the milk on Shabbos. What are the differences? Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, look at this. This is a very famous opinion. He says, even permits changing a timer. So you can use a timer according to Shlomo Zalman Auerbach. But he says you can change it by altering the controls in such a way that delayed the action that the Shabbos clock is set to cause. If you remember the old timers, they had like little pins that went in. Some of the simple ones still have it. So you can move the pin without moving the machine, without moving the device and changing it, because you're simply delaying it. So that's not doing a malacha. That you're just causing the malacha to take place later. You're not even having it move it. You could make it go on or off earlier, but you can surely make it go on off and on later on.
Not earlier, but later.
You can have it go off and on later itself, right? So this is the difference between the two. And once again, the question that comes, the question that is not dealt with here is, what about in Eretz Yisrael? Like, what about heaters? In Eretz Yisrael, like we have, you have a setback thermostat. You don't even think about it. But in Eretz Yisrael, I mean, I'm not sure what it is today. Today they have more internal heating and so forth. But like back in the day where they had what they called the tanurim, right? The tanurim or the mazganim, right? The ones that sit on the wall, you have to set it up. You ever been in those Israeli places and suddenly everything goes off? And you can't wait for it to cycle back on, but that's cycling back on based upon a Shon Shabbos, a Shabbos clock itself. So, well, once again, that was Rav Moshe's famous tshuva. I do, by the way, have the summary in Hebrew and much more extensive for those who want it. But it's really saying really what he has, except it goes through it. The key, by the way, the key to Rav Moshe's tshuva is he doesn't really talk about as much about this connection to having the goy and not the goy. He talks about zilusa the Shabbos. Zilusa, this disgrace of Shabbos. And that's the part I think, people have the most difficulty with the tshuva, because using a Shabbos clock in such a way enhances Shabbos. Right? It enhances Shabbos in a lot of ways. The bottom line is, just to say one final word, for those of you who use Shabbos clocks to turn off your lights, now that the world is going to LEDs and complex fluorescents, you're probably not saving all that much money. Okay? Because I'm sorry, you keep them on the whole time. I mean, it may even cost you more money running the motor or the electronics
Yeah, really deep,
to
maybe.
turn them off and so forth and so on. So it doesn't mean to say that you should waste electricity, but the real savings is going to be something on a heater or other device that would have a motor that would be based upon and use serious
More power,
electricity,
yeah.
more power. Anyways, okay, so that's the tshuva itself. We'll pick up where we left off here for next week, and if anyone wants the Hebrew, it's right here for you. Okay.